Welcome to Commander Central, episode 149, and today we're going to talk about when a downside on a card would become too much downside. I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
Gentlemen, how you doing today? It's autumn. It smells like autumn. The leaves are wet, and it smells like fall.
What are you talking about? We're getting snow this weekend.
Oh, I'm not looking forward to that at all.
According to my forecast that I read up on my weather app, they changed it to just rain.
Okay. I left the office and everybody was saying snow on Sunday.
I think it was Ryan posted a picture from CCO podcast. He had snow in his backyard like last week.
Like 2 inches of it.
Yeah. And then it was gone the next day, so at least we didn't get it yet like those poor Canadians. Anybody play any fun games this week? Max was in the shop, finally over Borderlands.
I played a game and then left.
Yep. Yeah, one in before the Ducks were playing is what it was.
Before the hockey game started.
Who did you play? I don't even remember.
I played Tuvasa.
Okay, that's right. Yep. That was a pretty decent game.
It was. A lot of back and forth. We eliminated one player pretty quick because he had an ally deck that was just going off, and then I died shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
The joys of Voltron.
Yeah. Yep. I do like your Tuvasa deck. You've done a nice job with it.
Well, thank you.
It's
fun to play.
It's actually fun to play against too.
Yeah.
Like, because you've killed me plenty of times with Tuvasa. Mm-hmm. Like, you have to watch it, but I do think it is a fair and fun deck.
I got to cast Replenish, and the only creature on the board was a Core Spirit Dancer, so it just got suited up with 13 enchantments. I'm like, okay.
I played a game against a Sir Gwyn deck that popped off. I got one shot by Sir Gwyn for commander damage at one point from some kind of damage doubler and like 3 pieces of equipment or something. So I got hit pretty hard by that. That was a good deck to see, and then it wound up winning the game. I played my Recce deck for the first time in a while and got hit hard by a Settle the Wreckage that exiled 12 creatures or something. And then I rebuilt in 2 turns and was back.
Big shock there.
The uncommon Green Knight, he was a 2/2, and when he attacks, you can make a target creature
+X/+X.
where it X is his power. I was able to cast multiple creatures in a turn with the Aronis' Monument out to give a creature +2/+2. So I had him up to like a 14/14 from that, in addition to having the Hero's Podium out, where creatures get +1/+1 for each legendary creature you control. So I was able to make the attacking creature, which was Ghalta, which was already a 20/20 from Hero's Podium, into like a 45/45 or something, and
I'm the scumbag?
it was fairly effective. So anyway, he worked pretty well in that deck so far.
The path takes care of that any day of the week.
Yeah, that's true. It does. I saw the Wreckage would have too if he had had a second one.
There was probably like a Docent out, and he's like, ha 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 ha.
I put Mystic Forge in my Vela deck and got it out, and that was pretty effective.
Yeah, I did not like that.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It's not like it is in other formats where you're going to frequently be able to drop multiple 0 drops and ditch that land and then drop multiple 0 and 1 drops off it. It was just a Phyrexian Arena, but just a Phyrexian Arena is still pretty good.
It is.
So I was fairly happy with that, testing that card out. You didn't play this week. You were in the shop, but you didn't play any. You didn't even play any Modern or anything, did you? You just were there and had dinner, I think. I saw you eating and then you left.
And then a buddy of mine got a hold of me and we went out to his house and helped him clean up his yard for the snow that was supposed to be coming. Hooked up the plow to his truck and worked on one of his cars. And then I came back to the shop afterwards and sat in BS for a little bit and then took off.
Because last night, because Max and I discussed the show topic tonight, and then last night Chris was like, well, what's the show topic? I'm like, oh, I didn't talk to Chris on Tuesday. I forgot to tell him.
So, and I sat there like, I don't even kind of remember what the topic is, so I'm not going to answer this.
But we got you the information eventually.
You did.
So today we had a few announcements on Weekly MTG. First one is the one we get the least info on, which is that at Magic Fest Richmond, which is November 8th, there will be a mystery pre-release of some sort. And they held up a booster pack that just said mystery pack. So it's going to be something that comes in boosters.
I wonder if it has to deal with My Little Pony charity event, the thing that they're doing.
Maybe it does. That never even occurred to me. I didn't know if it was going to be like a surprise set. They did like some kind of a master set or something, but that could well be. It could be
it's
all.
Probably not, because I know that's just meant for charity, but it very well could be.
It could be because it is an event at that pre-release that you have to sign up for, and those mystery packs are part of that. So that could well be. So we'll find out more about that because like supposedly that's when we'll find out what it is when they crack those packs there. So anyway, that will be revealed November 8th, which is the weekend after the the Commander Fest in Chicago and Seattle. We found out we're going to get a new unset called Unsanctioned. That's going to be reprints from the previous unsets as well as some new uncards. And they are in pre-constructed decks, right?
30-card decks five 30-card decks that you can combine together.
So it kind of comes in like a Game Nights box where you would, which actually I kind of like that system better than boosters because when the boosters were a thing, you really had a lot of people that were like, I want to run this in my EDH deck. Then you had to have that conversation. Having it as a self-contained product that everyone's on the same page. Hey, let's play this
I just
unset.
hope they don't reprint the lands from the original lands.
Well, there's new lands in it.
Okay.
There's 5 new foil and 5 non-foil of a new land that what they'll be, I don't know, but I don't think they're going to be the original lands. I would guess they did not say those were going to be reprinted.
Because those are one of the few things that I enjoy them not reprinting because it's more of a collector's item for people.
Such a unique looking land too. I tend to agree.
Yeah.
The last one was Game Night spoiled a few new cards. Now, actually, I didn't catch this or even really think of it till now. Are these the only new cards in Game Nights, or are there more than this? These are the face cards at the very least.
So the last year's Game Nights had 5 face cards that were new.
And I don't think anything else.
I don't think much else. No.
But
we saw cool reprints like Time Warp.
That was in there, and was it Shared Animosity or was it? There was a red enchantment that was Shared Animosity.
There wasn't Mana Echoes.
No. There was a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, it was shared, so it must have been shared. Yeah, there were some decent reprints in there last year as well. So let's talk about the face cards here briefly because I think they're all none of them are amazing, and they're kind of designed, I think, in a way for
kitchen table
people and more casual. But I don't know. I think they're kind of playable, most of them. So let's take a look at those here really quick. There was one of each color, so they're monocolored cards. There is... We're going to pause here for a second, Ken, because I can't read my picture. I need to... There we go. So there's 5 cards, one in each color. We got... the first one is High Cliff Felidar, which is a 7-mana white cat beast. It's 5 white. It's a 5/5 with vigilance, and when it enters the battlefield, for each opponent, choose a creature with their greatest power among creatures that player controls and destroy those creatures. That's not amazing, but I don't know. That's playable, I think, in some decks. Like, you're taking out the 3 biggest power creatures in the game, and you're being left behind with a 5/5 creature with vigilance. Like, it's not great, but it's also not terrible, and I think that kind of applies to most of these. If I'm playing that Arabo cat deck, that probably makes the cut.
Oh, for sure. And you're ramping out your brains anyways. So.
Yeah. And the next one I'll read is the Sphinx, is the blue one, Sphinx of Enlightenment. It is 4 blue for a Sphinx. It's also a 5/5. It has flying, and when Sphinx of Enlightenment enters battlefield, a target opponent draws a card, and you draw 3. Again, that's not amazing, but I don't know. Draw 3 cards at the cost of 1, and you get a 5/5 flyer left behind.
That's actually not bad because I think, what is it? I can't think of the 5-mana one where you draw 4 cards. Can't think of the name of it.
Sphinx of Athun, is that the one that has the
I'm thinking of
fiction
the sorcery that does it.
Oh, yeah.
So you're paying 1 more mana for a 5/5 flying body, plus giving an opponent a card at the same time.
And Sphinx of Lost Truths is 5 mana, so it's 1 less, and you draw 3, discard 3, but it has a kicker for 2 mana, where you just don't have to discard, you just keep the 3. So unless you're doing graveyard stuff or something, you try to avoid.
Yep.
I want to cast it for 7 usually. This is more efficient than that. It's only going to cost me 6 to draw the 3. I guess I have to give up 1 card, but it's also a 5/5 versus a 3/5. So I don't know. This is maybe playable in my Sphinx deck. And I think that's kind of how all of these are. There's a zombie here, Max. You want to read the Calculating Lich to us?
Yeah, Calculating Lich is a 5/5 zombie wizard for 4 black. It has Menace, and then whenever a creature attacks one of your opponents, that player loses 1 life.
Again, I don't know. I maybe run that in a zombie deck, maybe.
It's a good way to make sure people,
I think I would run it. The ability itself is what I'd be running it for.
Yeah.
The body doesn't even matter. It would be the ability itself.
And especially in if you are, against a token deck or something, someone's going to take 9 damage. from their 9/11 swinging at them or something. There's situations where that's a really good card.
Because it doesn't just factor on you. It's whenever any creature attacks an opponent.
And it's like an Edric type effect.
Yeah, and there's no danger to you. It's not unless someone steals it or copies it or something. But like
or it kills you.
Yeah. So I think that one's fine. Chris, we have 2 more here. You want to read them to us?
Yep. We have Fiendish Duo, which is 4 and double red for a devil creature, who is also a 5/5. They seem like they're all 5/5s here.
I think the last one is the only one that is not.
Yep. So this devil creature has first strike, and if a source would deal damage to an opponent, it deals double that much damage to that player instead. So pretty much a
gratuitous violence for 1 more mana, but with a 5/5 first strike body.
Yes.
Or Angrass Marauders, I think.
Which is
7 mana.
This is just better
for a 4/4.
And Marauders is I think black red, right?
Yeah.
So
No, it's mono red.
It's
Is it mono red? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a better Angrass Marauders. I guess the tribe is less relevant devils than Minotaur, but like how many Minotaur
Is it though?
Yeah, right. Really, like it is.
Is
but
it
like,
though? Like,
but
I think there's more devils than Minotaurs.
But like that's also a legit card. There's a lot of decks that care about double damage, and that's just one more way to do it. That's playable.
Yes.
And how about the last one here?
Earthshaker Giant, which is 4 and double green for a giant druid who is a 6/6, which is kind of legit for a big nasty out of green. The giant druid has trample. Whenever Earthshaker Giant enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn.
So it's got an overrun when it comes into play, but it's also a 6/6. Again, there's a lot of decks that want more overruns. And it's blinkable because it's on ETB. So there's like, if you're playing a rune or something, or you have options to blink something in and out and reuse that ability. It's not Crater Hoof and it's not Pathbreaker Ibex, but it's not bad.
It's just another option of
it's like a third option in some decks.
Especially when you're playing green. I mean, it's just nice because you get the body out of it too. So you could probably start cutting a little bit. Like if you're already running an overrun itself, you could cut it to play this, play 1 more mana and get the same effect.
Yeah. Yeah, like none of these are like super aggressive, like 2 drops that you're like, oh man, that's going to be really good in my, Krenko deck or something. But there's a lot of decks you're like, oh, I would really definitely consider this card. So I was actually somewhat pleasantly surprised at all of these. None of them are amazing, but I think they're all pretty interesting. So that's going to be the Game Nights product that comes out in November. That's in later. No, that's November. And it's the pre-Christmas slot. They kind of did the same thing last year. It's a bunch of reprints. It's decks that are designed to kind of play against each other, and it's basically a good teaching tool is what I've been told by everybody.
Because Wizards hates us and doesn't give us holiday gift boxes anymore?
I guess.
Those things were so nice.
They were awesome.
Well, no, they actually showed off their new holiday gift box at the same thing.
Oh, really?
They're bringing it back.
Yes!
It's designed a little bit differently, the physical box itself, but the box itself is also foil. Oh, so it has like a lenticular foil on it.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I'm not gentle with those boxes, so.
Just don't take the plastic off it.
Yeah. I think it's more expensive because I think it comes with 10 booster packs in it, and it used to come with 3.
It used to come with 5.
3 or 5. So
it's
almost
a pre-inserted pack of like a random or a different art foil. And
then the sweet dividers.
Yep.
So I think it's basically a
steroid
oversized
version
of like a fat pack or like a. Well, I guess
if it's within the $35 range, I'll probably still pick one up.
That's not bad.
If it's the same price or even like maybe $5 more than what a bundle costs, you get 10 packs there, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah. Right.
And without the die, who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get the box.
Yeah, a better box.
Exactly.
A lot of interesting stuff there. Anyway, so
I can go blind in my office when the sun's beating through the
people,
windows.
Right. Well, if you want to talk to us on social media, how would you do that?
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. You can search us up on Facebook, CMDR Central. You can find us on YouTube searching CMDR Central. And you can find us online at cmdrcentral.com.
You can also head over to patreon.com/CMDR Central and check out our reward tiers. And if you are so inclined to support us financially, that goes a long way.
It does.
Making sure I wear pants come video time.
Which we probably should mention. We actually have been talking about this, and our plan is the first show of 2020, so that first show in January is going to be video-based.
Yes.
We have a reason that we won't announce yet why we want to definitely be on video by then for sure anyway. And we've kind of been, it's been one of those things like all summer, we're like, we need to start moving to video, but this thing is coming up in 2 weeks, and that thing's 2 weeks after that, and we've just been like, we just got to like set a date and do it because there's always going to be a thing.
So now I'm going to play devil's advocate for all of our scared listeners out there. But are you guys still going to have your podcast version of this?
Absolutely.
Yes.
We will. Shouldn't be much different. Frankly, the video show is not going to be radically different than the podcast. We're just basically going to have a camera on us and probably be sitting in a slightly different way and hopefully have some card images and stuff edited in. But like, as far as people who just listen to the podcast, it will be the same show.
Yep.
Yep, I have had a few people who they asked, they're like, oh, so I hear you guys are going to try and do video because they heard us talking about it before. Like, you guys done with the podcast aspect. I'm like, oh, no. So I just want to make sure everyone who's listening, we will still have the audio files.
Absolutely.
Will be up.
And I think we did mention this when we first announced all this. I think we're going to start with just our Monday shows being the video one.
Yes, that's the plan. Yep. It'll just still be audio only on Thursday.
Yeah.
And what I think we'll try to do is when we have guests on, and we're going to try to do a few more of those. We have a couple coming up actually in the fairly near future.
Yeah.
Those will be audio only, probably Thursday shows. At least starting then, we'll not just do exclusively deck techs on Thursday. We'll probably have guests on a few of those shows as well, just to kind of break it up. And
we should have guests come on and do deck techs with us.
I think that's also something we've got a couple plans to work on as well. Yeah,
all our fellow content creators are like, oh really? Okay, I'm busy that week.
Oh, I'm sick. Cough, cough.
Got the Borderlands fever. Max transferred it to me.
I did not know that was communicable. Good to know. I will have to.
I got a sneeze in your mouth, but it's fine.
That's so gross.
So a couple contests here in full swing as well.
Yeah, so for Twitter, we're giving away the pack of Ultra Pro Is It sleeves that we picked up at GP Vegas this year.
Yeah.
So retweet and follow us when you see that tweet pop up, and you'll get entered to win those. And for Patreon, we're giving away that Sir Gwen Hero of Asheville deck that we built last week.
Yes, indeed.
So as long as you support us on Patreon or continue to support us on Patreon by the end of the month, you'll be entered in to win that, and we'll announce that in the first couple weeks of November.
All right. Excellent. I think we have a couple new Patreon supporters, too, we had to mention here.
We do. We have quite a few. So we want to say thank you to Shane Dahlquist, Patrick Healy, J.D. Rossi, Clayton Hamrick, and Rodri McDonald. And I know I butchered that, so I'm so sorry.
The look on Max's face, too, as he's reading it, like, I don't think that's right.
That would be the best part about video is the look on Max's face as he's reading names off here.
There's a lot of more vowels than consonants in that first name.
No, video's going to be amusing because Max and I like to point at each other.
And make faces. We can't sit next to each other at dinner anymore.
No, definitely separate you two, like the two naughty kids in class.
We can pass notes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Max. We also are sponsored by Flipside Gaming.
Yeah, head over to flipsidegaming.com for all your MTG and other TCG needs. Use promo code CMDR in all caps to get 10% off all orders, $10 or more.
All right. Very good. Is there any additional business before we move on to the show here? I don't think so.
Nope.
Business is taken care of. All right. So what we're going to talk about here is cards that have a downside. And here's an example. Path to Exile. And that's kind of what spurned this. There was a conversation on Twitter. Someone was saying they didn't really like Path to Exile. And one of the reasons was because it gave your opponent a land. And over the course of many, you want to ramp in Commander, you're ramping your opponent. That does add up. I didn't agree. I think that's worth the downside. Chris, who plays Modern, would say most Modern players
I think it hurts worse in Modern.
Sure.
Because, Modern is such a tightly tuned format that extra land does kind of make a difference sometimes.
So I guess let's talk about a bunch of these cards and let's try to figure out where the line is where they cease to be worth it. So let's start with Path to Exile. I run Path to Exile, and I think every one of my white decks. I don't know if I'm not running it anywhere.
The mana efficiency on that is just too good not to run.
And it's an Exile. Like maybe if it wasn't Exile, you'd be like,
It's instant speed.
Speed, 1 mana, exile the target. So number one, it gets around indestructible. It gets around death triggers for the most part. There's a few exit the battlefield triggers, but not many. It's almost always on death. So it gets around that kind of stuff, and it gets them a basic land, mind you.
Yes.
And there's been times I've had people fail to find. Not a lot, but I've had it happen. So it doesn't always get them a land, and it gets it tapped.
It's because everyone's been greedy with their lands lately.
I absolutely am.
Mr. I run 6 basic lands in my crush deck.
And I'm cutting all my lands down to 35.
I am. Well, the problem with that, and I mentioned that, I was like, okay, so I think I can go to 35. I'm like, but I'm already struggling. Like, I was struggling to find room for Fabled Passage in a bunch of my decks, which I think is a real good card, but I'm like, I couldn't really find, like, what am I going to cut? Why cut a good duel for a land that's just going to go get me a basic? Unless you're doing landfall stuff or whatever.
But then that makes Path to Exile even more effective then against people
like
you.
Right. So anyway, I'm struggling to find cuts to go to 35 even. So what if Path got 2 lands? Is that the limit? If it got them 2 basics, is that where you say, I don't know if I run it anymore?
For 1 mana?
For that 1 mana, you'd say nothing else changes on Path to Exile.
I'd still play it. Because you still have the option of always hitting your own creature.
Well, okay, so there we go. Then I think the caveat would have to right. So then you give them 2 lands, but also it becomes radically better as a like self-targeted thing.
Yeah, I agree with Chris. I would, if that's the point, unless it was a dire need, I would probably mainly use it for my own source of ramp versus, exiling my opponent's commander. Because at 2 lands now, that's just paying for the commander tax that they probably couldn't pay the next turn with that 1 extra land.
For example, in your R&K deck, where you got a gazillion tokens, I feel like you're just going to cast on your own creatures 95% of the time if it got you 2 lands.
Oh yeah.
So let's say the caveat on there is only your opponent's creatures then, so you can't flex to hit your own thing. And we should note.
Then I would run Swords to Plowshares.
I've cast Path to Exile on my own creatures as it is plenty of times as well. Mm-hmm. So it's not like that's unheard of right now. So let's say it's only your opponent's. Is it worth it then at that point? Is 2 lands too much?
I think it is.
I don't.
So number one, this is complicated because Swords to Plowshares exists. If Swords to Plowshares didn't exist and this was your only option,
then you run it.
Then you maybe still run it. But I think that number one, you have Swords. Dispatch is not a terrible card because usually you can hit 3 artifacts pretty easily. Dispatch is 1 mana, instant speed, and it taps a creature. But if you control 3 or more artifacts, it's a better Path to Exile because it just exiles.
You also have Condemn.
You also have Condemn, which is instant speed. You also have Declaration in Stone, which is sorcery speed, but it's an exile effect.
It's also 2 mana.
So, but I think if you're not giving them 2 lands, it's maybe worth it. So you think you would still run it?
I think the mana efficiency of the card is too good not to.
Sure.
And especially for casting at instant speed, they're not going to do anything, and that's going to rotate to your turn. It's going to be one of those chess match pieces.
Sure.
Where when played at the right time, it's phenomenal. When played at the wrong time, it just burns you.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about Swords to Plowshares? So Swords to Plowshares is a same as Path, 1 mana, instant speed, exile, and your opponent gains life equal to the creature's
power.
So a lot of times it's 1 or 2 or 3, and you just don't care. And there's a lot of times it's 10, and you still don't care because the creature's going to hit you, and you don't want it to hit you, so it's worth it.
It's the same thing I'm going to come back to with Path is the efficiency of 1 mana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never stopped with I've never stopped and gone, ooh, I don't know if I want to Swords that creature. They're going to gain life. Like if it's worth removing, it's almost always worth the life.
Yes.
So what if it was double? What if it was they gained 2 times the creature's power?
I mean, we play a format where your commander damage could eliminate that opponent. So who cares if they gain 20 life or 30 life? If you have a commander that you can, chip away at that 21 at, or you have a big beater commander like Sigarda or Dramoka or, one of the Theros gods, you're going to get through eventually to knock that commander damage down. Now, if you're playing more combo, maybe you don't run it then.
I think I would still play it. Because there are cards where if you have 100 and some life or something, you win the game and stuff like that. So
I think I still run it. I think the difference here between it and Path is giving your opponent an advantage that they can use to win the game with 2 lands. For the most part, the life you're giving someone with Path isn't something they're using to win the game.
Right.
And you also have 2 other opponents that can help cut down that life total as well. Because when someone's life total suddenly goes from 24 to 60 because you just pathed a 15/15 or something or some giant creature.
Everyone turns on them to get them back down.
They understand he had to remove that. Of course he did. And they tend to then turn on that player because of their giant life total. Whereas the 2 lands also, I think they don't maybe turn on as much. I don't know why that is, but I think they would, the life total would make you a threat in a way the lands maybe wouldn't.
Yes.
So they would take care of that problem as well. So I think Swords, if you doubled that, it would probably be fine.
I would still run it no matter what.
Now I think if you're talking quadruple or triple or quadruple, then at that point you're don't know if I can cut through that, but maybe not. Maybe triple, 3 times the life.
What is that?
More Aetherflux Reservoir triggers. That's all that means for me.
Doesn't the white tempt double your life?
There's definitely a white one that does. I think it's a beacon.
Beacon of Immortality doubles your life,
which is
total.
5 mana.
Yeah.
So then there's something you could relate it to, if it were double for 1 mana to get rid of something, but you give them double the power.
Yeah.
Or for 5 mana, they double their life total in general. I mean.
And I think generally speaking, the caveat on a lot of these is you have to have them not hit yourself, because as it gets bigger, the better it is to target yourself with that. Because I've hit my own creatures with Swords to Plowshares plenty of times to not die too. Like I've definitely done that on multiple occasions when like a creature that has hexproof is swinging in at me for lethal, and I'm like, well, I'm gonna swords my own thing to gain 4 life, and
I'm gonna declare
buy
block.
me one
I'm gonna
more
declare
turn.
block first,
right,
and then swords it.
Yeah, it's like I've done that. So I think Swords of Plowshares has a lot more room for that life total to go up before I start not running it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Chaos Warp.
Oh, I forgot about that one. That one's not on my list. I knew there was another one.
So 3 mana, instant speed, exile target, non-land permanent.
Yep.
And they're
Or
shuffled
you
into their
shuffle
library.
it into their library.
And then,
Yep.
and then reveal the top card of their library, and if it's a permanent, it goes into play.
Yep.
So
It's any permanent.
is it any permanent? So
Yeah,
it hits land
you
too.
can hit
Okay, all right.
lands.
Yeah, you're right. It is. I knew that. So 1/3 of the time, it functionally ramps them a land. More or less in most decks, it's going to put a land into play. Probably 1/3 of the time, though, it's a whiff because it's an instant or sorcery or something they can't cast. And then occasionally you get burned and a Planeswalker comes into play or an Elesh Norn comes into play or whatever.
Omniscience,
Or
and
what
you
you
just
got rid
go,
of.
oops.
Man, I've never had an Omniscience come down, but I've had bad stuff. Man, Omniscience would feel bad.
I have hit a Maelstrom Wanderer with it before, and they shuffled, handed me the deck, I cut it, and he flipped the card, and it was Maelstrom Wanderer again. I'm like, oh no!
I always cut after Chaos Warp because then I can't be upset if they flip what I
Yeah.
cast.
He flipped it, and I'm like, it's
your fault.
What is this?
And again, I've Chaos Warped myself for different reasons, at different points in time to save something that was going to get stolen, particularly. But I've done it. So again, what's the point? Let's say Chaos Warp says they reveal cards until they hit a permanent. So there's no chance of a whiff they're going to get something for sure. Does that change it on you?
I would be fine for the simple fact of the color that it's in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
If it were any other color, I would probably be like, no, it's not worth it.
Sure.
And the fact you still shuffle whatever you're getting rid of away, so, the chances of them hitting that is still slim.
Sure.
And, you might just get lucky and there's a land on top or a soul ring or something. But I agree with Chris. If it in red, it's fine having that verbiage of the reveal until you hit a permanent.
I tend to agree. I think I would be okay with that. Yeah, I'm with you guys there. I think I would still probably run it. It is 3 mana, unlike the other cards we discussed that were 1. But like you said, Chris, being in red and being able to hit an enchantment or hit any creature or hit a planeswalker, things you can't normally deal with, or a land. Red can deal with lands, but like the ability to hit any target. Because I think I run Swords and Path in mono white all the way up to 5 color, and I think I'm pretty tempted to run Chaos Warp in 5 color too.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it hits anything. It hits any target.
Any target, it's a single red pip. You're kind of looking at the Rift issue here.
Right, yeah.
The single red pip is what makes it so easy to
Yeah.
run in 5 color.
Well, it's also a card for me, anyways, that doesn't draw aggro.
Yes.
Because they usually get something. Like,
Yeah.
in my opinion, the most time I see it's like 60%, 70% of the time they hit something.
Yep.
And I think people tend to feel, if they at least get a land out of it, they feel like it, like, oh, that they obviously don't love
Yep.
that exchange, but like for psychologically, it doesn't feel as bad when you get something off it, or even have the chance to get something, even if they whiff. I think even having the chance to having got something back.
And knowing that the card that was hit is still back in your deck,
Still
so
in
you
the
have
library.
the option of
Right.
getting it again.
Yep. That's a good point. We had a couple blue ones here we'll mention. Since we're talking about 1-drops, there's the 2 blue 1-drops, Pongify and Rapid Hybridization, that give people a frog lizard and a green ape, respectively. Those are destroys, and there's Reality Shift at 2 mana. That's an exile, and it gives them a manifest face down.
He didn't even bring up Swan Song. That's another
It's
one
on my
mana
list.
blue one.
It's on my list. We'll do Swan Song next.
Okay. I was like, 1 mana blue ones,
yeah.
and you don't even talk about that one.
Rapid Hybridization and Pongify. So here's one thing I will note about these. I put them in my Vela deck, which is Dimir, probably 4 or 5 months ago, because at some point I was like, oh man, those are better than every black removal spell, which doesn't seem to make sense, but they are. I think they're better than anything in black.
The mana efficiency is
1
really
mana,
good.
instant speed, hit any creature.
Yep.
They're not exiles, but they're still pretty great. And the downside is they get a 3/3 creature that doesn't have flying, which is pretty relevant sometimes too, particularly in blue. So where does that become a problem? Where do those cease to be worth a trade-off? Is it a 5/5? If the creature gets bigger, if they
I would not do that in blue for a 5/5. There is no way.
No? You don't think so?
No, not in blue, because I'd rather just bounce the creature than with like a boomerang or something
So
like that.
unlike red, you have other options to deal with
Yes.
the creature. So if it's a 5/5, or say it makes them 2 of the beasts.
2 3/3s. Ooh.
For 1 mana.
Well, now this is going to come down to
you hit yourself
people.
then.
Yeah, you hit yourself, or the people that you're playing against. If you know that they forget their tokens,
sure,
then I'll blast them all day and just be like, "Oh yeah, remember those 2 3/3s you have over there? You could attack those like 5 turns ago."
I think of the ones we've discussed so far, at least, this is the closest to being balanced. Not that they're not really good, but I think if you tweak the levers too much on these, they become cards I probably don't play.
Yes.
Not because they're not good, but because Unsummon exists and things like that. You know, there are other cards I could maybe run in those slots then. Reality Shift.
Too good. It's Exile.
Yeah.
It's Exile, and that Manifest, I don't know if I've ever gotten burned by that Manifest. I'm sure it happens, but like I don't think it's ever been something that screwed me over.
When that gets casted against me, I always manifest like a sorcery.
Sure, yeah.
Burns me every time.
And there's times I've saved myself with a Reality Shift when someone's done an Enlightened Tutor or Vampiric Tutor or something, and I've then Reality Shifted it to the top of it to a Manifest creature. And I think this is one, if they made 2 Manifests, I don't think I care. I think I still run it.
The Exile effect in blue is so good. And it's random, 2 off the top of their deck.
Yeah.
And a lot of times even the creature, even if they do throw a creature down, it's not what they want right now. So they don't want to flip it over anyways.
And at that point then you're like, well, okay, let's say they flip it over. Well, that's no different than them having drawn it and cast it again anyway.
Yep.
So like it's functionally almost an unsummon. It's an unsummon that had a chance to be better than that. In worst case, you spent 2 mana for an unsummon, kind of.
Yes.
So it's still, I think, a really solid card. I think if they do 2, I think I still probably run it.
Yeah.
So I actually,
unless you're playing an Animar Morphs deck, then then you're kind of like
sure. There are situations where you don't. I tend
they want their cards face down.
Yeah. So okay, Chris, as you mentioned, 1 mana blue spells as well. Swan Song.
Yeah, Swan Song's phenomenal.
Yeah, Swan Song almost like is one of those cards where I liked it a ton when it came out, and I think I like it better every time I see it. So it hits 1 mana counter target instant, sorcery, or enchantment. And the opponent gets a 2/2 Swan with flying. So that's not nothing. It's a flyer. They can block almost anything.
Yep.
So let's say they got 2/2 flyers.
I'd still be okay with it.
I probably would be too. I think if they got up to like 3, maybe I wouldn't, or 4. And I think at that point then Standard, it's a whole different deal in Standard.
Yes.
If you give your opponent 2/2 flyers in Standard, that's terrible. I think in Commander you can probably survive that just fine. And Swan Song is another one I'll mention. I've Swan Songed my own spell before to make a swan. And I think it was specifically I went to destroy someone's creature on attack, Force of Willed my spell, and then Swan Song the Force of Will so my spell wouldn't get countered, and I got the Swan for countering the Force of Will to make a swan to block with. Matter of fact, that was against Don Miner, VDH Rec at Vegas, not this year, but the previous year I had to do that to survive a turn. And so I still lost, but like, I bought myself a turn. I mean, why not? Why not? If you're going to die.
And it hits, 60% of decks?
I mean,
cards in a deck?
It doesn't hit planeswalkers and it doesn't hit creatures.
Yep.
Now, most creatures, there's a lot of creatures you don't care if you counter. Occasionally there'll be one that gets like, man, I wish this could hit that Elvish Norn or that Jin-Gitaxias or that.
Yep.
Rekia Hero.
A Creative Hoof Behemoth or whatever. Or, obviously a lot of times planeswalkers you'd like to deal with too, but it does hit a lot of things that are problems for sure. So yeah, Swan Song is pretty good. What do you think here, Max?
I don't run Swan Song in any of my decks.
Why? And is there a reason for that?
In our meta, I'm more afraid of the creature.
Okay.
You don't even run it in Brago, where you have the flying blockers.
Don't run it in Brago. It was in Tuvasa, like it was that or Arcane Denial for Tuvasa. And when it comes down to it, I'd rather hold 2 mana and counter anything with Arcane Denial than saving this one for something that might hurt me. Like, Tuvasa's a fast deck, so I'm not too concerned about people playing a Doubling Season or a Phyrexian, any permanent that's going to not be in my way, but I'm worried about a Crater Hoof. I'm worried about a big fat blocker that I can't punch through.
You're not worried about a Wrath of God or... Because that's usually what I would use them for, is those spells that are going to completely hose me. And I just want to stop it and here, have a bird.
Care. Right, like stopping the problem is more important than creating a problem with a swan.
Yes.
Now, I have had someone tell me one time that they don't run it in, I can't remember what the commander was. It was a blue Planeswalker commander because...
So Teferi.
It was so... was it Teferi?
Teferi
the only one,
are the twins.
Yeah. because I didn't want to give them a way to come back and hit the Planeswalker.
I could understand that.
And I'm like, okay, I buy that. That does make sense. I can see
Especially
that.
if your deck requires you to have that Planeswalker up, then yes.
And I think once upon a time when I first built my Sphinx deck, I was not running it because I'm like, all my creatures are flyers, and that gives them a flying blocker. And I wound up putting it in the deck to replace something, and like, I'll try it out. And I don't think it's ever been an issue because there's other opponents you can attack, and by the time it matters, if that Swan is the difference, you're like, that's your fault. You need to find a way to get around that.
Yeah.
So that hasn't hurt me in that deck, but I do agree. If you start giving them the flying part is the component there. If it makes 2, then I think that's a little bit different, and 3 absolutely is. So you mentioned this one, Max. We'll jump to Arcane Denial is on my list here. That's one that I know the CEDH community is very. They argue a lot about, or at least I've seen multiple arguments. Some people say it's too much. It enables the person who gets countered to bounce back very quickly.
Because you get 2 cards?
They get 2 cards. That's a big deal.
It's still super mana efficient, and it hits anything.
That's it's mana efficient, it hits anything, and
it replaces itself.
In CEDH, I understand why it's giving someone 2 cards, because that deck is probably tuned. They probably know what those 2 cards already are. In a non-CEDH environment, though, they could just be drawing 2 lands.
Right. That's a format where Dark Confidant is a much bigger deal because that one card off Dark Confidant can be game-changing, and it isn't in non-CEDH Commander. I am pretty comfortable casting Arcane Denial.
It's in my top 3 go-tos for counter spells.
Yeah. I mean, I remember
it's not double blue. That's the other thing.
Yes, that's
the colorless.
The
is so
best
nice.
counter spell is double blue, and this one is not.
Yeah. Now, maybe in mono blue you don't care, but in anything else, the ability to only have to save 1 blue mana to leave mana up for a counter spell is a big deal.
Yes.
And it does replace itself, like you said, too. That's also a pretty big deal sometimes.
Yeah, especially if you cast it before, like on the person who's right before you when it's your turn.
Yeah.
Then you just get that card back right away the next turn.
Yeah. That's already a disproportionately advantageous card for your opponent in that they get 2 and you get 1. So what if they get 3 and you get 1? Ooh. Is that what breaks it? 3, because 3's a lot.
3 is a lot.
I do 3 and 2.
Right. Well, okay, then you're keeping the parallel, though.
Sure.
You know.
But that's still a lot of cards you're giving away.
You are.
Well, now I wonder though. Okay, so if you get 1 extra one and they only get 1 extra one, the jump from 2 to 3, you're doubling your cards, and theirs are only going up by 33%. Is it better if you get 2 and they get 3 than it is 2 and 1?
Yes, I think it is.
I think it maybe is too. I think that's actually maybe better.
Yeah, it probably is.
Now that I think about it,
I wouldn't even look at it as they're getting 3 cards. I would look at it as I'm countering a spell and I'm drawing 2 cards for 2 mana.
Yeah. I'm not like positive about that. I'd have to think about it, but the top of my head right now, I want to say I think that's better.
It's so like I agree. It's better mathematically because
taking down 3 is a big deal too.
You're both replacing your spell essentially.
Sure. Yep.
So you're still netting a card, and they're netting 2 cards.
Yep.
Ugh.
It's interesting. I think 1-3 is too much of a spread. I don't know if I run it at 1-3. And there's a lot of competition too for blue. There's a lot of decent blue counter spells. So I think that one's pretty close to being balanced.
I think so too.
I have one more blue one here. Curse of the Swine. Also from Theros, just like Swan Song. And
I don't like this one either.
It's double X sorcery speed.
I haven't seen this card played
Exile.
in a long time.
I have. It's from him. He plays it.
I finally pulled it out of that deck.
Really?
And replaced it with Generous Gift. When Generous Gift came out, I replaced Swan Song with Generous Gift. Or excuse me, Curse of the Swine with Generous Gift.
Curse having that double X in its casting cost is not fun.
Is it? No, it's just double blue and X.
Oh, double blue and X. Okay. Still,
so
that's
you can hit a lot
blue.
of targets, but the double blue in the sorcery. If it was an instant, it would be an amazing card. It's not sorcery speed.
Cyclonic Rift is just better.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah. You can respond.
I'm doing the
dies
math
to Doomblade.
Yeah, I'm doing the math of so you pump 5 mana into that with the double blue, you're at 7 mana to hit 5 targets.
Yeah.
Whereas you could just rift everything on the entire board instead of 5 single targets.
But I assume you're probably already running Rift anyway. This will be in addition to that.
True.
And I agree, Max, this card I think I see it less now than I once did, but I still do see play, and I only recently stopped running it in the deck where I was running it. But I would agree this one is so close right now, I think any changes you make it not playable.
Right.
Now, if you're playing, this goes into color combination again, too. If you're playing red-blue, I would probably play it. Sure,
because your answers are limited, whereas if you're playing white, in my case, this was in a white-blue deck, there's so much stuff in white that deals with creatures that it got outclassed pretty easily.
I've never liked this card. The sorcery speed is the big hang-up for me.
Yeah, okay.
Exiling,
I get that.
And giving them beasts for everything you exile is not fun either.
The deck, and I was playing it in my Sphinx deck, and very often what it wound up doing for me was just knocking 2 blockers out of the air.
Yep.
So I would turn them into beasts, and like that for me wound up being a big useful, really useful.
Flying.
And then I'd also be like, okay, well, I might as well take care of that one thing there too, because why not? But I feel like there's probably that's kind of a corner case, and I would say more often than not, I don't know if it's worth it because of the sorcery speed. And I think if you change much, it definitely isn't.
Yeah.
So we just mentioned these two, and I mentioned Generous Gift. We might as well do Generous Gift and Beast Within. What do you guys think there?
3 mana, destroy anything.
Yep.
Give them a 3/3.
Anything, even lands.
Yep.
And they get a 3/3 Beast or Elephant in the case of the white one.
Oko Thief of Crowns is better.
It is better. It's way better.
He's a lot tough. Well, he's not instant
3
speed.
mana.
He's not instant speed.
Yeah,
though.
he's not instant speed, though.
So he's look at it like a sorcery speed. These are instant. At any time they can hit. There's not, particularly in green, there's nothing else that hits any target. White has.
It's 100% playable, in my opinion.
So if the beasts become 4/4s, I think I still run it.
I think if it stays at 1 beast at 4/4, I would run it in
green,
in
definitely.
Green, it's fine. White giving someone a 4/4 seems. I mean, that card already is really breaking the pie.
Yeah.
In white, giving them a 4/4 just seems too.
I think white
too off color.
Well, and here's a card I don't have on my list, but like in white, I probably then switch to Oblation. If it's a 4, or at least it's close.
That's not on your list, really.
It's not. Yeah,
that's on my list.
Okay.
Although I think if you were to change it instead of making the creatures bigger, but giving them 2
3/3s,
2 3/3s on each of those cards, I think is fine.
You still run them?
I would still run them if they. I mean, destroying an Oko and giving them 2 3/3 elephants.
It's probably
fine because I'm probably playing white something with a bunch of bodies, or white weenie where I just have made a bunch of tokens. You know, it's just chump blockers at that point.
I don't know if I run a Generous Gift if it's 2. I think I probably still run Beast Within.
Just because of the color.
Because of the color. Particularly in mono green or something like that, I think I probably would still run Beast Within. Generous Gift, there's just other options in white, including several ones we mentioned.
Yeah.
And since we just mentioned it, Oblation.
Yeah.
And Oblation's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit. At least it did with me, and now I've actually started running it again in decks.
It's on that teetering point already.
Yeah. So Oblation is 3 mana, 2 in a white, instant speed. It tucks a. Now that one I should have. Is it non-land or land permanent?
The owner of target non-land permanent.
Okay, so it is non-land. Gets shuffled into the library, and they draw 2 cards.
Yep.
I run it in 1 deck currently, and that is my Jeru deck that makes a lot of tokens. So I have the flexibility there to basically treat it as a draw spell and hit a token. It's also a deck where I want my commander many times to get recast. And when the shuffle, I can just put him back in the command zone and recast him. So there's a lot of flexibility to hit my own thing there. So I tend to view it as a draw spell in that deck, almost like an Altar's Reap kind of thing in black. That also has a modular effect where I can say, oh, this bad thing is going to happen. And it's absolutely worth stopping it from happening if they draw 2 cards. Like that's a good trade-off. So that's a card I do think it's worthwhile. But that's one that's also kind of close. So I think what's the line there? Where does that cease being worth running?
I think it's pretty balanced already at giving your whoever 2 cards. I think if you bump that card count up to 3,
it's too good for yourself.
It's too good for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's probably too good for your opponents.
I would agree.
Like shuffling in an Elspeth Suns champion, we're going to use your Jeru deck as an example. If I shuffle your Planeswalker and that's just giving you 3 cards.
Yep.
And oh cool, you're just going to cast your commander and go get it anyways.
Sure.
I think this is a pretty balanced card. You know, it gets rid of a problem. It lets people draw cards. You can use it offensively for yourself. But if you change this in any way, it's going to be too favorable for any player.
I would agree. I think if you change it so it didn't have the option to target your own stuff, if it just said opponents' things, I think that might even be enough for me to not run it.
Oh, I would agree.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to hit something phenomenal for that. It'd be like, you can have 2 cards.
And that does happen. There are times when I'm like, I got to have that gone or I'm going to lose the game, and that is absolutely a thing that occurs. But there's also enough times you're going to draw and be like, I want to remove that thing because it's annoying, but it's not worth giving them 2 cards for. And that's also a frustrating place to be at. At that point, I'm like, I'll just run, Elephant or Generous Gift or something. Like, you'll find something else maybe.
Elephant Graveyard.
Elephant, yeah. I'm going to call it Elephant Gift, but it's Generous Gift. So those are the ones I had written down that like jumped out at me out of my decks. Are there any ones I missed here that you guys want to talk about?
So let's stay in the white in the same exact mana cost of Crib Swap.
Oh yeah, I forgot about Crib Swap.
Yep. Exile target creature if its owner creates a 1/1 colorless shapeshifter creature token with Changeling.
I would run that over Oblation.
I would say the biggest problem with Crib Swap is that Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares exist.
Yeah.
So like the only reason I don't run Crib Swap in decks is there's those 2 cards that are so good, and I don't know if I need a third way to deal with creatures. So number one, that's kind of the problem with Crib Swap. If you remove Swords or Path from the game, Crib Swap becomes significantly better. I think so there's that element. If I ignore the fact that there's better cards out there,
yes.
The downside in Crib Swap is not a downside I care about.
No, because nothing. It doesn't have any abilities. It's just a shapeshifter. So unless it's an accidental thing where you're playing against a tribal deck and you gave them a shapeshifter that's going to go with their tribal stuff, then it's an issue. Otherwise, it's usually not.
So we'll say this way. So tomorrow the Rules Committee bans Swords to Plowshares. Then I immediately probably put Crib Swap in all of my decks in that slot. I would guess that's probably what I replace it with. So now looking at it from that perspective, let's say I have Crib Swap in my decks because I did it for that reason. You would really have to, I think, tweak Crib Swap to make me not run it. I think if you could go up to 3, maybe even 4. If they got 4 Changelings, I probably, unless it's a certain deck, like maybe that would make...
They're only 1/1s too, that's the big thing.
Now maybe if the person's playing like an Elf Ball deck or something that has a bunch of synergies where it says, all creatures of this type. Like if they're playing a tribal deck with weird stuff, then maybe that changes things. But it probably just changes things in terms of I don't use it on that person. I still probably use it.
Right.
I just say, well, I can't cast it in 1 out of 20 games that I play against a tribal deck or something. So yeah.
Or you cast it on your own thing to get the tribal synergy.
It's that much better, right.
Yep.
And again, that's when I think you would have to change it. You couldn't hit your own stuff then. But I don't know if I've ever done a Crib Swap thing where you hit your own stuff.
No.
The advantage there is you can fetch it as a creature type because it has Changeling.
Yep.
So, yeah, that of all the ones, I think that's the one that you can change the most and have it still be perfectly fine.
But as you said, it's fighting for so many slots already that it doesn't see much play.
What else?
Chris, you can keep going down your list.
Okay. Grove of the Burnwillows.
Oh,
modern.
Good call.
So Grove of the Burnwillows is a land that taps for colorless, but it also taps for red or green. And when you tap it, each opponent gains 1 life if you're creating red or green. So now it's not just saying one opponent; it is each opponent.
So that matters.
So
to Commander.
Technically, it's 3 life if you're in a pot of 4 people.
And that's each time you tap it for mana. Period, right?
No, just for the colors.
Just for the colors. So does it tap for colorless?
Yes, it
does. Man, I think there's a lot of room. There's a lot of wiggle room there as well.
There is a lot of wiggle room, but it's still another card that helps your opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah. My issue is if you're running this in something not Gruul, like if it's 3 colors, you could probably make a good argument for it. But if you're just in green-red, I think there are better dual lands out there in those colors to run.
I'd still run it because I'm playing red-green. I'd want all the duals I could possibly have.
No, and Max is right. I see what you're saying. Here's the thing, though. If you're in just red-green, you have other options if you're just in Gruul. But if you're just in Gruul, you probably need the colored mana way, way less because you only are required to worry about 2 colors.
Right.
It's one of those things like I remember at one point in time looking at the pain lands and be like, that's going to add up over the course of a game. The reality is, particularly in a 2-color deck, by turn 4 or 5 most of the time, you just tap it for colorless. Yeah.
And
you can work around it.
It's nice to have as a free untapped duel on turn 1 if you do need the color.
Very
so
true.
I'm going to eat a little bit of damage early on, and then late game it's just going to be a colorless source most of the time, and it's never going to hurt me. I would guess Grove is the same way in a Gruul deck. It's going to gain your opponent some life on turn 1, 2, 3, but land that comes into play untapped every time. And by turn 5, you're probably just tapping it for colorless.
Yeah.
So I would say that could definitely go to 2, and I wouldn't care.
Yeah,
maybe even 3.
But you also got to think it says each opponent.
It is each opponent, but like I would still say that a lot of the times that you cast it, you're going to give them minimal life early, and you can get through it.
It becomes, inconsequential later on.
I think so. I think 3 is I think I can maybe even take it to 3.
Okay.
I think 3 is too much.
Okay. I hear you.
Only because, like, and I get it, in the late game you probably aren't tapping this for colored mana.
Yeah.
But on the off chance you do have to tap it for colored mana, that could change you getting the killing blow on your opponent.
Absolutely. There's been games that I've lost because I'm like, I forgot to attack with that.
Yep.
But 1/1, and then like 6 turns later, I'm like, that would be the difference right now.
Yeah.
So like that absolutely does happen.
2, I think, is okay though.
Okay.
That's a 6 life point swing.
Yeah.
It is, which is a lot too. That's not nothing. All right, Chris, what else do you have here?
Forbidden Orchard.
Oh, gives
Taps for
any color.
Any color, but whenever you tap it for mana, target opponent creates a 1/1 colorless spirit creature token. Now, the spirit does not have flying.
It doesn't.
But you are giving a creature to someone for mana.
Yep.
And it's colorless, so that does play into some strategies.
Sure.
Like Vela. Like, I would not give the spirit to Dana if I'm up against Vela.
But you probably could find somebody else you could give it to.
True, but
I mean, like,
both my other opponents have hexproof, and I'm just like, I'm not doing anything this turn. I refuse to tap this.
I will move to discard.
It's part of a Mindslaver lock that makes sure your opponent has a creature every turn that you can force them to attack into your stuff, into your like Glissa deck, for example, to recur that Mindslaver every single time. So it is part of that lock. I can't think of the last time that I've found, because I've gotten those tokens before. And they never give them to the person who has a skull clamp out or who has any kind of a sack elf that can take advantage of it. It goes to the person who's doing nothing at all. It's not much of a downside.
No.
I do like the opponent actually is the one that creates the spirit. So on top of skull clamp, they never give it to people with the parallel lives, the anointed procession, or the doubling season out, because since the active player isn't the one creating it, you still get the double tokens.
Yeah. In a field where you only have X amount of 5-color lands, I think this card's perfectly fine the way it is.
Yeah, and it could go. It could probably go 2, and I would not care.
Now, if it were reading each opponent gets one,
that's a whole different deal.
Then I would be like, oh,
because then there's that one person who is going to have the skull clamp or have the Ashnod's altar or something out, and you're like, oh man. I agree. But if it hit I think if it gave people 2 tokens, it wouldn't matter. If it gave them to every opponent, that is where that's the deal breaker for me. I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
All right, next.
I have one more, but I know this one's on Max's list.
So go ahead. No, go ahead.
Settle the Wreckage.
That I got just housed by this week.
Did you?
Yeah.
No,
good.
I do believe so.
Cut it from Sir Gwen.
4 mana, instant speed in white.
Yep.
Yes.
Exile all attacking creatures that target opponent controls.
Yep.
So if the player has hexproof, you can't target them.
Okay. And you admit it to yourself, because if you get too many lands, it becomes again like Path Exile. If you get your own stuff, it gets way, way better.
Yep. Now, for each of those creatures, they get a basic land into play tapped.
Yep.
So I think it's a phenomenal card, but I also think it's a card that's right on that tipping point, because a lot of times it probably could just hose you. Because you say the token guy swings at you with 30 tokens, and you're like, well, I can survive this, or I just lose. I don't know which route I do right there.
Oh, I buy myself a turn, maybe, and I've given this person a gazillion lands, and they're just going to kill me next turn and then kill everybody else.
Yep.
It feels like a kingmaker sometimes to a degree.
Yeah. I love this card as well.
I love it.
It's one of my favorite wraths in EDH. Because it is target player, not opponent, so you can ramp yourself if you really need to.
Yeah.
I've done it a few times.
I've seen you do it.
It's basics again, so those token decks are typically 2+ colors. Yeah, there's the monocolor ones, but if you're facing off against a 5-color token deck or something, how many basics do they really have in their deck?
Right.
True.
And I think this is a card where politics really come involved, because it's like, okay, everybody, I can make sure I can end this player, exile their 30 tokens, but over the next 2 turns, like over the rest of the round of the table, you all have to start attacking him because he will rebuild, right away.
Yeah, well, let's put it in perspective. So token deck with Gave. So you exile everything. Now that Gave player just has so much mana to just keep doing Gave shenanigans.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you can tweak it very much. I tend to agree with that. I think it's
now if the lands came into play untapped, I think it'd be unplayable.
Yes,
I think it would be more mana, and if it brought him in untapped, it wouldn't be an instant.
And you couldn't hit yourself too.
Right.
That's too good.
Yep, I think that's what the breaking point is on the card is between tapped and untapped.
And basic and non-basic.
Yeah, any land.
Yeah, just go get 30 lands. Okay.
It'd make the game a lot faster because you just pick up your deck and you'd be like, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, Max, what do you have here?
So we talk about these cards quite a bit on the show, but all attempt with something cards from Commander 2013.
Yeah.
I will always take a land, just so if anyone ever plays with me, you can guarantee I am taking the land.
So yeah, the green one gets all the lands. The red one makes the tokens. The white one puts +1/+1 counters on creatures. The blue one makes a copy of something.
Makes copies, yep.
And the black brings something back from the graveyard?
I believe so. I don't know if I've ever seen the black one cast, or the white one for that matter.
Let's just look.
It's usually just the green and red one that I ever see cast.
So Tempt with Discovery is the green, that's land. Tempt with Glory is the white one for 5 and a white. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Each opponent may do the same thing. For everyone that does, put another +1/+1 counter on all your creatures.
Yep, I would not take you up on that.
Yeah.
Tempt with Immortality is the black one, 4 and a black. Return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. For every opponent that does, you go get another creature.
Okay.
That would be tempting.
Tempt with Reflections is the blue one. Choose target creature you control. Put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. Opponents do it, you do it again.
Okay.
And then the red one makes all the tokens.
Okay. The blue one, they get the same copy that you got, correct?
Each opponent may put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of that creature. Yeah, so they're getting the same thing you're copying.
Okay. So the one, I did have that at one point in time when I was making a Exalted deck. I was going to put it in the deck because I'm like, well, I'll just copy one of my crappy Exalted creatures. That I'm not attacking with anyway.
That's awesome.
And if I get 3 of them, it's going to buff my creature, that times
That's
more.
actually a good idea.
And I don't care if they get Exalted. They're just going to attack me with less. Fine. They're going to get +1/+1 to attack me with less creatures. But that one I've not seen cast much. It's mostly the blue, the green and the red one that you see. The red one in particular because it makes elementals, which is relevant in a lot of decks.
They have haste.
And they have haste.
Yep.
Yes.
And so you're giving your opponent's creatures with haste. That doesn't matter because who cares if they have haste when it's not on their turn.
And most of the time there's a Perforos or a Impact Tremors or something
involved,
out,
yes.
So.
No, this is where I think they become broken.
Okay.
What if they're instants?
Done. I would play them.
Like,
I would still take you up for a land.
Tempt with Glory is 6 mana, but at 6 mana and an instant speed, that might be playable.
Sure. That completely changes
blocking, it changes combat, it changes everything.
And it makes your opponents lets your opponents hey, look what happens if you take me up on this tempt. My creatures then get +2/+2, and I'm going to really totally screw that person over in blocking.
Right.
But then you're reliant on everyone else to make this. It's interesting.
I wouldn't trust Max.
You never do.
Because he'd kill me on the backswing. He'd be like, haha, you took out my threat. Now I take you out.
They're probably too good at instant speed,
They are probably too good at instant speed, I agree. But that's the only way to change these, to make them...
Well, so how do you make them... What makes them not worthwhile? So...
We should really just focus on the
green and the red one. Yeah.
The green and the red one, because those are the ones that are played the most.
I think if you're... I don't know if you can change them at all. Like the way they're designed, I think if you give your opponent... They only work because you get more stuff.
Yes.
And I think if you don't get more stuff, then we're back to the alliance, the join alliance, wherever those cards were, where everyone gets the same thing despite how much mana they put into it, and those don't see much play at all.
Oh, like the Join Forces cards?
Join Forces, that's what it was.
Those are on my list as well.
I think if the temps get changed too much, they're just not playable.
Yeah,
I don't think they really are playable. Anyways, there are better cards aside from the red tempt.
Yeah.
Which is just gas the way it is.
Yep. Yeah. And the green one, again, it's if you're doing landfall triggers or something, or there's some decks where you're like, I'm going to get Guy's Cradle and I'm going to get Sarah Sanctum and Nykthos, and like anything you choose, you're getting worse
That's why
cards.
I take them up on it,
Take
because
strip
I'm
mine.
like, strip mine.
Yeah.
I'm hoping you're going for one too. And
It is funny. I was reading the rules text for the green one. Your opponents go get their land, then you go get your 3 lands. So they don't know what you're getting technically until they
I
resolve
say it
everything.
right away.
You tell
I'm like,
them,
I'm going to get strip mine.
go get your land and remove the land if you're going to take them up on it. Yeah. So the joined forces ones, Max.
Yeah, Collective Voyage. That's the green one, right?
Yep. And basically it's green and X, and you can spend any amount of mana, and so can anybody else.
Yes.
And then all players ramp that many lands.
And I think the blue one is the same thing, but you draw that many cards.
I believe so, yeah. The white one makes soldiers, I think.
Yep.
Again, the green one's the only one that sees much play ever, and that's because some landfall decks don't care if you get stuff. They're going to get more advantage off the triggers.
And it gets put in like group hug decks.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm helping you, and now I'm going to kill you.
I think that the way those cards are already structured as it is, the advantage you're getting is not based on the numbers so much as it is you're playing a landfall deck or something. And I just don't know if you can, again, I don't know if you can change those in a way that makes them.
It's also going to matter with the opponents that you're playing against.
Right, for sure.
Because if they're willing to put into it too, to like speed up a game or something, then awesome cards. But if they're not, you're wasting all your time and resources to help them.
Sure. What else do you have here, Max?
Those are the 2 big ones I could think of.
The other one I was kind of thinking of was, so let's talk about like just briefly the Howling Mine kind of cards that affect everybody. Let's ignore the fact that whether that's a good idea or not.
Oh, it's coming to a local game shop near you very soon.
Howling Mine, you're putting it in a deck?
And Kami of the Crescent Moon, I think
What deck are you making?
It's just Esper Fairies. Don't worry about it.
I can't picture why you want those in that deck, but I'm
totally
curious.
building a pillow fort deck. I've told you this
really?
like 30
that's
times.
right. Okay, all right.
Just because I want to have the fun aspect of the game. I want to bring back everyone seems like at our shop so focused and like, oh, I screwed this up. I just want to sit down with my deck and just be like, let's all just have fun. It's also see what kind of weird interactions are going to happen and all this
It's
stuff.
also good to have a deck like that against new players.
Yes.
That's relatively straightforward and doesn't require
when they
them.
draw like 7 cards a turn, they're going to be like, that was awesome. I got to do this and this and this.
Sure.
And
I get that.
The game lasted 8 hours, but I got to do stuff.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Rites of Flourishing was the one I was thinking of.
Double draw, double lands.
And you're in green, so you tend to be able to take more advantage of that. But I think if you tweak any of those, Howling Mine, Rites of Flourishing, or anything, if you make any changes, for the most part, the only reason they work is if you have some way to take disadvantage of them. It's not like Chaos Warp where it's just a good card. Those you're already probably doing something that get extra advantage, and I think if you change them at all, it just becomes unplayable even in those situations.
Yes.
I really want to play all these cards, like in a blue-green deck, and just throw Narset down and be like, everybody can draw. Never mind.
No comment. I even have anime waifu Narset that's going in that deck.
Nice. Scumbags unite, I
Although
guess.
Yeah.
It's wingdings forever, so I'm just going to be like, yeah, this is what it does. Don't worry about
Trust me.
You get to draw out one card.
Trust me. I forgot to mention this in the games we played, and I don't think you guys were there, so I'll throw it here, a stinger at the end, because I told him I was going to talk about this, so this will be our brief exit story here.
Was it Dr. Mike or was it Matt?
It was Dr. Mike.
Yes.
I might have heard this story.
We were playing against, it was a new player, he had been playing a few months.
Okay, it must have been that last game when I came back, because I saw a new face in there that you guys were sitting with.
Very nice guy, was playing a deck, and he understood the game pretty well. He advanced quite a bit, so we were having a good time. Dr. Mike plays Darksteel Forge. That's the indestructible one that makes all your artifacts indestructible.
Yep.
Plays it and has the Japanese version. And turns it around so the guy can read it. Like you do sometimes with the cards against a new player. And I did. I was like, he can't read Japanese. What are you doing?
He might have been able to.
It was a pretty good, like it was like, be the nice guy, like, because I do that all the time when I play a card and someone's like looking at it, like, what is that? But I'm like, he wasn't looking at it because he didn't know what it was. He's looking at it because it was Japanese, and Dr. Mike turns around. Here you go, man, just so you can read the words you can't read on this card. I just thought it was pretty funny.
Wow.
So he's like, you're going to mention that in the show, aren't you? I'm like, I absolutely am, and then I almost forgot it.
That's great.
All right. Well, that was an interesting conversation. Actually, kind of gave me some perspective on the power level of some of these cards.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. All right. We will be back next week with another show. Thank you very much for listening. Our podcast theme is Retro Future Dirty by Kevin MacLeod, licensed via Creative Commons. Our show is edited by Ken Peddle. You can find him on Twitter at LOAD3R. You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach. You can find Max at CMDRCentral_Max. And you can find Chris at WiseSquishy1. We're back on Thursday with a deck tech. Till then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.